Hello, BookTube. I come to you a faint remnant of my former self, very, very early on Sunday, because once again, Saturday's mail, what is technically the last mail haul of the week, was delivered to the front porch so late that I didn't even see it until this morning. And I figured, since I certainly need a pick-me-up, we might go through it together, just so we've covered the mail for this week. With, again, just a warning that I might have to stop this video. We'll go as far as we can, but if it feels to me like I'm just going to start sneezing for, well, the last time was an hour and 15 minutes solid. No pauses, just sneeze, 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 sneeze for an hour and 15 minutes, so that I was incoherent by the time it was over. There was blood all over the floor by the time it was over. If it feels like that's going to happen again, then I won't be able to continue the video. Obviously, I'm not one of those booktubers who's going to suffer for his art. Since there's no art here. But I thought, until then, we can go through these packages. There are a bunch of them, and it ends in a box. Might be something that'll take my mind off this. This is just an epic allergy attack for no discernible reason that I can understand. Is it too early in the morning for you to attack mail? Oh, it's never too early in the morning. All right. Oh, well, okay. Appropriate enough. Our first book is due any day, and it is the finished copy of Tiffany Watt-Smith's study of Schadenfreude. With the subtitle being The Joy of Another's Misfortune, and the cover design is brilliant. It's just a banana peel. And this is just a study, very, very small, so this is really more a collection of anecdotes than a study, about why it is that the misfortunes of others so often make us experience a little burst of happiness. Let's see what we have here. I don't think we saw the advanced copy of this. I'm blanking if we did or not. We've all had that curious, creeping feeling, the deliciously dark and complex joy arising from the news of an other's misfortune. That's hard to spell and even harder to explain, but Dr. Tiffany Watt-Smith, Senior Research Fellow at QMUL Center for History of the Emotions. I don't believe such a place exists. We'll call it Hogwarts. And author of the Book of Human Emotions, expertly and entertainingly illuminates this taboo in Schadenfreude, The Joy of Another's Misfortune. Try as we might to ignore or suppress it, we can't help but feel the hint of a smile when our perfect coworker gets chewed out by the boss, or our friend's fairy tale marriage hits a rough patch. The Germans named this furtive delight in another's misfortune Schadenfreude, and it has perplexed philosophers and psychologists for centuries. Why can it be so satisfying to witness another's distress? And what, if anything, should we do about it? And I've had an advanced copy of this just sitting around, and I haven't got to it because typically books like this, there have been a handful on various subjects like this. They're always about the same size. Typically they end up disappointing me because they don't delve nearly deep enough into the subject. Schadenfreude, for instance, is an incredibly fascinating subject. What delineates it? When do we feel it, and when don't we feel it? And where does it come from? Like, for instance, the two examples that were given in that pub sheet get at what I've always thought is a binding characteristic of most Schadenfreude, which is that it's a kind of sublimated dislike. It's not that you feel joy at another's misfortune. It's that you feel joy at the misfortune of either someone you dislike and are not socially allowed to express your dislike, or you feel joy at the diminution of what looks to you like an unfair amount of happiness on the part of someone else, even someone you do like. So that it's sort of like there's a proving level in the mind. You look at a couple or a friend of yours or an old colleague or whatever, and good fortune up to a certain point is mentally acceptable to you, and there's a point, and it's not a question of whether or not you envy them. There's a point at which that true level in your mind says, okay, they are experiencing too much good fortune. And that's where Schadenfreude comes in. I don't know that Schadenfreude is a word that we would use if you found out that even a hated coworker of yours was dying, for instance. I think we'd probably use other words for that. But hearing that you have a coworker who gave his teenage daughter a Maserati for her graduation from high school, and then hearing that that car was wrecked in an accident, you pause for a minute to ask, well, is everyone okay? And then the minute you're told that everyone is okay, all you feel about that is happiness. And it's because of the disproportion of the original thing. I'd be curious to know, I'll read this tonight, I'd be curious to know if this author is going to delve in detail into this subject. It'd be great. It'd be great if that happens. But I don't know. This comes out on November the 20th, and I have no idea what the academic rigor is at Hogwarts. I have no idea what this author thinks is delving deep into a subject. I'm not going to Google it. I absolutely don't believe that the organization that I read the name of exists. So I have no idea where this author is coming from. And they don't have to come from anywhere. She doesn't have to come from anywhere. She could just sit down and give a long think to Schadenfreude. Maybe look at it in literature. Maybe look at it in life. Maybe look at it in the weaponized petri dishes where Schadenfreude has reached a new and cosmic level of perfection. Those being social media, Facebook and Twitter. Are composed largely of Schadenfreude. And so if you wanted to write an 80-pound soaking wet with rocks in its pockets book on Schadenfreude, you really wouldn't have to do much more than study Facebook for a week or Twitter for a week to get an idea of how it works and how it doesn't work. But anyway, it's an interesting subject, so I'm looking forward to it. And let's move on. Let's move on to the next package here, which is just an adhesive envelope, but it feels like I'm lifting dead weights because I've been hemorrhaging rather badly, so that tends to weaken the body, doesn't it, Bean? Let's see here. Okay, this is by Christopher Snyder. And it comes out next year in April. Looks like April's going to be a big, busy month. Just glancing at it, it looks like it's going to be a big, busy month. And this is Gatsbys World: Scott, Zelda, and the Jazz Age Invasion of Britain, 1904 to 1929. I believe that's the vague hint of a human face over a street on the cover. So that is. I mean, the subtitle tells you all you need to know. Let's see here. The poet T.S. Eliot, the polo star Tommy Hitchcock, F. Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald. This diverse group of Americans came to Oxford in the first quarter of the 20th century, the Jazz Age, when the Rhodes Scholar program had just begun and the Great War had enveloped much of Europe. Scott Fitzgerald created his most memorable character, J. Gatsby, the Oxford man in the pink suit, shortly after his and Zelda's visit to Oxford. Fitzgerald's creation is a cultural reflection of the aspirations of many Americans who came to the University of Oxford seeking beauty, wisdom, and social connections. Okay. So this is, the author delves into archival material from early Rhodes Scholars. And enables the narrative to illuminate a detailed portrait of what a historical Gatsby would have looked like, what he would have experienced in the post-war university, and who he would have encountered around Oxford. An impressive array of artists, including Eliot, Yeats, Virginia Woolf, Aldous Huxley, Evelyn Waugh, Winston Churchill, J.R.R. Tolkien, and C.S. Lewis. Okay, why do I know Christopher Snyder's name? Do I know Christopher Snyder's name? He is the founding dean of the Shackles Honors College at Mississippi State University. I don't believe that exists either, so we're not doing too well here. He is a visiting research fellow at the University of Oxford. Okay, well, I've been to the University of Oxford. I've never been to Shal Dormay, the Elven Afterlife, or wherever it is. He is the author of 8 books, including The Making of Middle-earth. Okay. Okay, well, this is for next year. This is for early April. A study of American expats at Oxford in the 20s. That's rather specific. Okay, all right. Let's move on here. Let's see what this next one is. I should probably get scissors here, but I'm too tired to do that either. So let's see here. Tired and a little weak, of course, because I can't eat. I don't have any air passage except my mouth, and that is used for sneezing most of the time. So this time that I'm making this video, the thought is in my mind that if my luck holds, I really should try to eat something instead of just sitting hunched over the side of the bed, continuously sneezing. Just sneeze, 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 sneeze without ever stopping. Without ever stopping. I swear. I hope you never have to go through it, but if you go through even 30 consecutive minutes of that, all you want to do is get your phone and call someone to help save your life. And I'm now at a point where I have done that sitting at the edge of the bed for an hour straight, 4 different times in the last 24 hours. So, and that, of course, disinclines you from eating. So let's see what we have here. Oh, okay. All right. This is a World War II book from March. This is by Robin Cross. It's Operation Dragoon, the Allied Liberation of the South of France. Again, I don't think I've ever read a book solely on this subject. I've read about it in histories of occupied France and in one-volume or multi-volume histories of World War II, but I don't think I've ever read anything just on Operation Dragoon alone. The story of the Allied invasion of the south of France on August 15th, 1944. This book is an expert account of the second D-Day, launched 2 months after Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy. As such, it has often been overshadowed by its predecessor, that's putting it mildly, but its significance cannot be overestimated. Okay, sorry. I made a mistake just then when I was reading this pub sheet, and I did so with the best of intentions. I did it as a mental slip. The sentence actually reads, as such, it has often been overshadowed by its predecessor, but its significance cannot be underestimated. Sorry, it's the editor in me. I automatically corrected that. I believe that its significance can be underestimated. I think my version is probably correct. Operation Dragoon was an American-French operation in which the British, who instead had argued for action in northern Italy, played a much smaller role. After nearly 5 years of conflict, British war stamina had been severely sapped. In contrast, the French, who had been excluded from the overall planning of D-Day, played an important role in dragoons, supplying the majority of ground troops in a campaign which had begun on the beaches of the Riviera and ended in the cool, clear air of the Alps. I last year read a great book on war in the Riviera that had, a significant amount of this in it, but again, it wasn't solely about that. Although I would quibble with both aspects of that setup. I don't believe that you would ever have found anyone in the rank and file or anywhere in the command structure who said the British war spirit had been sapped. And I also think you'd be hard pressed to make the case that the French were excluded from the planning of Normandy. But either way, who is this author? Did he also go to a fictional institution? Or he's written over 30 books, including The Bombers, Strategy and Tactics in the 20th Century, which I think I read. His wife, novelist and historian Rosalind Miles, I know that I've read her books. And he has worked for the British Ministry of Defense and has also written over 150 television documentaries. I thought absolutely sure when I first started that sentence that it was going to say that he has worked for the British Ministry of Magical Defense. I thought 100% sure it was going to say that, but no, the British Ministry of Defense is real. Okay, so this comes out in March, and is just World War II history. I'm noticing there's quite a bit of World War II history coming out that I've seen in 2019, so that's interesting. Always for me, anyway. All right, let's move on. We're doing all right here. We're just forging ahead. No idea if I'll upload this. It might just embarrass me when I look back on it. We'll see. I'm hoping that I'm just better when the sun comes up. That's all there is to it. I'm just hoping that I am. I feel like I've been worked over in the abdomen. My entire every breath hurts because I've been sneezing so much that it's pulled the muscles there. So, but I think I would recover from that fairly quickly if I could just have my life back. I can't really do much in the way of writing. I can't do anything in the way of reading, except in these little intervals. So it'd be nice to get that back. Okay, so what have we got here? A murder mystery by Giles Brandreth. That name sounds awful familiar. I think we've encountered that name on this channel. This is Oscar Wilde and the Return of Jack the Ripper. I think that's the title. It looks like the title is Jack the Ripper, but I think all that fine print up at the top, scattered all over the cover, I think that is supposed to be part of the title. So I think the title is, yeah, Oscar Wilde and the Return of Jack the Ripper. Let's see what we have here. Who is Giles Brandreth? He's a writer, broadcaster, former MP, Chancellor of the University of Chester, and one of Britain's most sought-after award ceremony hosts. Oh, and he's written other Oscar Wilde murder mystery series. I think that's what we saw. I think we saw the last one, The 7 Secrets of Happiness. I think we saw one of those on this channel. This is, let's see here, London, 1894. 6 years too late for the Ripper. When it appears that the notorious Jack the Ripper has returned to London, Chief Constable Melville Macnaghten recruits his neighbor Oscar Wilde to help him solve the case. Why would he do that? Why would he do that? Why would he do that? I'd be willing to bet you that question is not answered nor even addressed in the course of this book. Hoping the author's unparalleled knowledge of the London underworld might be exactly what the police need to finally capture the serial killer. In an account narrated by Wilde's close friend, fellow writer Arthur Conan Doyle, whose knowledge of the London underworld was far better than Wilde's, and his was an amateur compared to 80 people that Chief Inspector of the London PD could put his hand on in 2 seconds. Wilde gathers together suspects from the theaters, brothels, asylums, and traveling circuses of East London in the hopes of finding the true identity of Jack the Ripper before he can strike again. But even as the pair of amateur detectives venture further and further into the tangled web of criminals, performers, and prostitutes, new killings come to light that bring the investigation right back to Wilde's own neighborhood. Yes, right. That's why there would never be any amateur detectives, especially not those countenanced by the police. Any actual police investigator would say that an amateur detective on the case of Jack the Ripper on the loose in London in 1894 is de facto your number one suspect. You want to limit the number of people with knowledge of crime going around interfering in potential crime scenes. You want to limit that number. You want to arrest the people who try to do that. You don't want to deputize them. Anyway, following Wilde and Doyle's search for the Ripper, Giles Brandreth's Oscar Wilde and the Return of Jack the Ripper combines a gripping detective story with a witty portrait of the two most brilliant and charming literary minds of Victorian London. Anybody come up with a third literary mind that might be more charming and brilliant than either one of them? Anybody? No. No. Well, I'm sure they're brilliant and charming in their own ways. That's all. There's a certain playwright from 1894 who's probably more charming and more brilliant than either one of them put together. God, I have no idea how this would work. None whatsoever. No idea how this would work. And I guess that's a primary selling point, is that I want to know now how it will work. So that comes out in April. And it is a Victorian murder mystery in which someone is imitating the crimes of Jack the Ripper, and the case is being cracked by Arthur Conan Doyle and Oscar Wilde. Okay. All right. Hurts when I laugh, but nevertheless. All right, let's move on to this next one. I don't know how we're going to top that last one, but let's see. Okay, this is January release. This is not known to me. I did not request it that I know of. This is by Tom Lee, and it is The Alarming Palsy of James Orr. Have you ever entertained the irrational fear that one day you would wake up and no one would recognize you? I've actually had that happen to me. When you travel overland, if you're in a long train ride across Russia or in the Bosphorus or wherever, that you're going to wake up the next morning and no one's going to recognize you. But I think this pub sheet probably means people who once did recognize you. That you would find your whole life proceeding around you as if you didn't exist. Imagine that instead of it being a sudden occurrence, you witnessed the whole thing. Helplessly watched yourself be slowly ejected from your own life. Sounds like being married to Deb. This is the reality in which one man finds himself in Tom Lee's debut novel, The Alarming Palsy of James Orr. This is a debut. A short but slow-burning tale of what can only be described as the suburban nightmare. Okay. I thought daisies and dandelions were the suburban nightmare. I've known suburban men, and I knew them when they were in college. They were as muscular as gnarled oaks, cared only about the fundamentals of the birds, the bees, and the pizza joint. And then they become suburban husbands, and I go to visit them, and literally all they would talk about is weeds in their front lawn, and the war that they are conducting on those weeds, and the technology that they are enlisting from the local Home Depot. And I remember the first time it happened vividly. I was sitting there in the living room with an old friend, and I wanted to say, "You have got to be joking. This is a joke, right?" But he wasn't. He was deadly serious. James Orr is a loving husband, father, reliable employee, and all-around model citizen. And he happens to have a fiction-friendly, ambiguous name. Orr. He lives with his wife and 2 children in an identical house in a picturesque community estate in which he is the residence committee chair. Short of a white picket fence, he has it all. Okay. All right. The setup is cliched. I'm not saying that this author won't be able to knock it out of the park, but the setup is cliched. So, it's not in your best interest to draw attention to that fact by mentioning a white picket fence. Why not add a white picket fence? All the rest of it is a cliche. Right down to the character's name, James Either Or. Why draw attention to that fact? And certainly don't imply that the author leaving out the white picket fence is an act of restraint. This is well-trod ground. Suburban alienation. We will be entirely reliant in this book on what the author does with it, not on questions of originality that hinge on the presence or absence of a white picket fence. Then one morning, James wakes with the distinct feeling that something is not quite right, and that something, as his startled wife soon points out, is his face, the left side of which has collapsed into a drooping jowl. After being diagnosed with Bell's palsy, James takes leave from work to wait out the temporary condition. He spends his days briefly trying to make himself useful around the house, only to eventually end up wandering the estate grounds and the private wood behind his house. He stubbornly continues to see to his social obligations, but those around him are made more uncomfortable by his increasingly erratic and aggressive behavior than by his facial paralysis. And as the palsy persists and his feelings of paranoia and isolation grow, James struggles to retain his sense of self and his sense of reality. Okay, so this could be really good. So this comes out in January. And let's see, who is the author? Tom Lee's fiction and personal essays have appeared in the Sunday Times, Esquire, Prospect, the Dublin Review, and Zoetrope All Story, among others. He's also the author of Greenfly, a collection of short fiction. Off the top of my head, I don't remember Greenfly. And he's been shortlisted for awards and longlisted for awards, and he currently teaches undergraduate and postgraduate creative writing at Goldsmiths College in London. Any of you go to Goldsmiths College in London? I wonder what this guy would be like as a teacher. Okay. Well, this is a debut. It comes with all sorts of UK blurbs. I guess it was received rapturously on the other side of the ocean. And now I get a chance at it. Okay, well, it comes out in January, so it will be the January books will be closest on my horizon as soon as I get back. And that brings us to the box, and then we will have relatively smooth sailing, except for my incessant complaining. So we'll do the box, and then we'll be done. What have we got here? Some sort of hardcover. Oh my. Oh my. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry, this is catching me by surprise. This is the I might have to stop. We got so close to the end. We'll see. If there are 50 more of these, then I have to stop. Okay, now we have a little leeway. We'll keep going. I have, to the best of my knowledge, I have not received one of these before. These are these gorgeous UK Oxford World Classic hardcovers. The ones that have the title and everything going down the front of the naked hardcover. They're just gorgeous, and there are a whole bunch of them. And I've never received one before. This is my first one. And this is A Christmas Carol and Other Stories by Charles Dickens. I love the design of these things. Just love them. Just that. Just a naked hardcover with just that on the cover. And that's what this is. This is just A Christmas Carol, Other Stories, and 20 original illustrations. 20 original illustrations scattered throughout. I have seen people, UK booktubers, go through these things. They're gorgeous editions. I just didn't know they were available in this country. I didn't know they were available for me to request. I would like a few more of these. I'll have to see. Like, for instance, there are 2 others listed on this pub sheet that don't appeal. One is a collection of Victorian fairy tales, and the other is the handbook of Baden-Powell's Handbook for Boy Scouts. I'm not interested in either one of those, but I've seen others of these that I am very much interested in. So I'll have to see. This does this come out around Christmas time? I would imagine that it does. Yeah, this comes out on December 1st in America. So I'll have to contact the publicist on Monday and see which of these things are available. If there are any others that are available, there are a few items. There are a few items like this. You know, when you get 10 books a day in the mail, you don't really have any grounds to go lusting after particularly pretty editions. I really don't have any good grounds to do that. I am well supplied with new releases. But even so, I'm only human, despite having precious few of the human earmarks. no regular blood type, standing body temperature of 101.2 degrees, ability to resolve close, fine images in complete darkness, a significantly better sense of smell and hearing, etc., etc., etc. And even so, I am only human. And when I see a pretty edition, a pretty volume, me wanty. And I admit, my first impulse is to try to get a publisher somewhere to send it to me. I don't think that's a bad impulse. It's a good bet on their part. I am a prolific reviewer with, if you combine my readerships in my various venues, a very large audience. And I rather pride myself on the fact that it's not just a large audience of those venues that you're adding together just numerically. I earn my audiences everywhere that I write reviews, and on this channel, I would hope I earn my audiences. I tell you what I like and don't like about a new book. I lay down my bona fides, And then when I'm finished reading a book, I tell you whether or not I absolutely loved it. And I stand by my recommendations. I live and die by them, actually. So I have earned my audience is not just happy to hear from me. They trust me. And I value that more than anything. So it's not a bad gamble for a publisher. Like, for instance, I forget the name of the publisher right now, but there's some publisher for the Christmas season coming out with absolutely beautiful boxed sets of Shakespeare, Jane Austen, and the Sherlock Holmes stories. Beautiful versions in boxed sets and I want them. I want all three of them, and I need to. That's what I was talking about. I want all three of those, even though there is no way possible to say that I need new editions of any of those three. I do not at all need them. Nevertheless, and same thing with these. Maybe not Victorian fairy tales, and certainly not the Boy Scout handbook, but lots of other stuff. Oh yes. So I'll have to see how possible it is. Very glad to have Christmas Carol. This has now become my favorite. I have two other Christmas carols here, but nothing that I like as much as this. And the illustrations added in, that's just wonderful. Fantastic. Okay, well, that's a great note to end things on. We end this little Edge of the Grave mail haul. This is an Edge of the Grave mail haul. It feels like it anyway. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And old friends of mine, very old friends of mine, if you were to talk to Deb, for instance, or a couple of other people who watch this channel, I believe they would universally attest to you that the amount of complaining that I do about physical ailments that I have increases the more inconsequential the ailment is. And decreases with serious ailments. Not that at age 28 I've ever had a serious ailment, but if I had, anyway. So this is going to be quite the uneven haul here. I admit there's only one of these books I'm over the moon about, and that's this one. That's the Oxford World Classics hardcover Christmas Carol. Look at how wonderful that is coming down. There's the door knocker on Scrooge's door that turns into Marley's face when he looks at it. So that is A Christmas Carol and Other Stories by Charles Dickens with illustrations. And then we have The Alarming Palsy of James Orr, a debut novel. Then we have Oscar Wilde and the Return of Jack the Ripper. Oscar Wilde and Arthur Conan Doyle decide to investigate a serial killer on the loose in London, and for some reason the London police decide to allow them to do that instead of taking them behind Scotland Yard and beating them half dead with truncheons. Then Operation Dragoon, about the oft overshadowed Allied combined operation to liberate southern France, which I've touched on. I'll try to remember, if I can, to list that history of War on the Riviera that came out, I think, last year. I loved it. It's been on my mind. I know it hasn't come out in paperback, or I'd have received it. But it's those of you who are interested in World War II and maybe interested in fully detailed accounts of maybe operations of theaters that you're not as familiar with. Boy, oh boy, is it a book to have. I don't know if I still have a copy. I'm too weak to look. But this will be a pointed examination of something that was only tangential to that. Then Gatsbys Oxford, University of Oxford for expats in the 20s. And finally a little book on Schadenfreude, on what Schadenfreude is, and when we feel it and why. And I think it's fascinating, and I don't take it personally when I'm the object of it. Like, for instance, right now, I am sure that some of you, even some of you who contact me, in my personal life and like dealing with me, like me as a person, I am sure that some people that fit that description are hearing that I am a blubbery, snotty mess and feeling a tiny hint of Schadenfreude, even if those people feel a little bit ashamed of themselves for feeling it. I bet they still feel it. So I don't take Schadenfreude personally, because I think it's unquestionably natural. I don't think it's a question of where if you were psychologically sound of mind, you wouldn't feel it ever. I don't think I believe that. Because I've known some people who were practically secular saints in their day-to-day life, and they felt it. I think it's natural, and I'm curious to know what this author will say about it. I hope the book delves deeply, because it's fascinating. But nevertheless, the first thing we're going to read is going to be a reread of The Christmas Carol. And in anticipation, I'm hoping that I have the strength on Monday to go hat in hand to the publicist and say, please, may I have some more? But in the meantime, that's going to do it. At least I only sneezed a few times. That's good. So I'm gonna wrap this up, and you know, I think I'm gonna do something that you almost never hear me talk about on this channel. I think I'm going to take a nap. Sun isn't up yet. Frida's wide awake, but she'll settle down. I think I'm going to take her out, then come back inside and take a nap, and just give my body a chance to recover, to gain a little bit of ground on this thing. Because otherwise, when the sun comes up and the day is on, if I feel this bad, I'm not going to want to do anything like Boldly Govember or Moby Dick, and I don't want to give that a pass until Monday. So there you go. You have an exhaustive account of Steve's life and times and snot. So I will wrap this up. But I will be back, I hope, later today. Thank you, BookTube.